Awesome. Okay, what I want to do today is I want to talk specifically about something that really begins at the core of any great business, and something that you need to have before you could create any core business. What do you think that thing might be? Any ideas? Mindset. That could be a good thing. And at the very base of mindset, I heard the word belief. And the reason that I want to talk about belief specifically is because beliefs do a really interesting thing. They often lie. Beliefs will often lie to us, and they will often tell us something that we're not. Has anyone ever heard that little voice that seems to talk and tell you lies about who you are and what you're thinking? You know that voice? You know that little voice in your head that the moment you're about to actually do something, you find that voice starts kicking in. Is anyone familiar with that voice? By a show of hands. In all honesty, by a show of hands. Everyone hears that voice. That voice goes off all the time. The thing that I realized many, many years ago, it was actually back in 1995, and I had an epiphany. I had a major moment. This major moment was my very first major mistake. In fact, it cost me $1 billion. It cost me $1 billion that I did not have. And I'll explain how that worked. You see, I love ideas. I love enterprises, and I love how you can create something out of nothing. Has anyone ever created something out of nothing? When I was 5 years old, I created my very first business. It was a tattoo parlor. And this tattoo parlor happened by mistake. It happened because, someone had been drawing a picture on a piece of paper, and it must have been the heat of summer or something. And I leant on it, and then when I leant on it, I moved up my hand and I put it up to my face, and I could see this image that came off this little piece of paper. Now, I got the entrepreneur bug, and I realized that I was actually quite a good drawer. That was the value that I had within me. I was actually quite a good drawer. So I thought, I could transfer this value. I could create a business. So I did. So I started drawing all these tattoos and started selling them for a massive 2 cents. Now, 2 cents, you might kind of gather back in my day, was a lot of money. And the thing was that what happened was I learnt my very first business mistake. And business mistakes are fantastic. They're fantastic when you learn from them. Not so fantastic when you remember them as an emotional or significant event and you keep going back to it, keep tapping into it. But if you get a value that is something of the past and you get it as a learning, it actually is a value. Now, what I got was that I realized that 2 cents in selling these particular tattoos, the financial model didn't work because by the time my texters ran out, there wasn't enough 2 cent pieces to buy another lot of texters. So I realized there was a problem with this business. So what I really wanted was I wanted another business. And one day, by sitting by a river, I noticed there were all these little soldier crabs. And so I collected up these soldier crabs and I went and did show and tell. Can everyone remember show and tell? So there I was with my soldier crabs and showed my soldier crabs and told the whole adventure about my soldier crabs. And then at the end of show and tell, there was nothing more to do with these soldier crabs. But I found that there was all these people that had a lot of interest in these soldier crabs. So what I did is I started selling the soldier crabs. I gave them names and I gave everyone a personal history about each soldier crab, and I started selling these soldier crabs. Now I knew the 2 cent model didn't work, so I put them up to 5 cents. And everyone started buying all these soldier crabs. And I thought, isn't this incredible? We can actually create from nothing. We can create from resources that exist around us. And we can create really from anything. But I began to find that later in my life, I decided that I wanted to create bigger businesses. By the time I was 18, I was able to create my first legal business. And I started a design studio because I was good at art. That was my value. So what I did is I started learning the lessons of building a design studio, and of course I made mistake after mistake after mistake, but the mistakes took me to the next point. Eventually I got to a point where I decided I wanted a challenge. I decided to leave Victoria. I was born in Victoria, decided to leave Victoria and go to Western Australia. And the reason for that is I found that the people around me would not let my neurology change. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you keep showing up as the person that you are, and people keep repeating back to you who you are. You know, that is, if people begin to tell you a certain thing, like my very first high school teacher actually told me, or actually not me, my parents, that there's a problem with Rick. And it's a major problem. And in fact, I'd get him out of the educational system as soon as possible because he's stupid. And so my parents came home, they told me I was stupid, and they said, you know, obviously there's a major problem there. So all of a sudden my secret was out and everyone knew that I was stupid. So when you get a belief that is that you're stupid, what you do, of course, consciously, unconsciously, you will act out that belief. So I did a lot of stupid things. And I realized that the first business that I really had to create, I started looking at successful people and I realized that I was not that smart. So I wasn't going to become one of these major people who created these amazing things. I was going to model a rock star because I thought musicians, actually, I don't know whether you've seen some of the bands, they don't look that clever. In fact, they don't actually act that clever. And I thought I could be a rock star. So I was okay at guitar, but I really wasn't that good at building a team. And so I began to realize that there was something else that I had to learn and build. So what happened next is I realized that I wanted to create a challenge. I wanted to get away from the people around me so I could reinvent myself. So what I did was I went to Western Australia. And I wanted to start a business somewhere where nobody knew me, and I wanted to see whether I could do this. And so I started my very first major advertising agency. I built it back then, I didn't realize there were so many agencies, in Australia. And back then there was about 350 odd agencies. Now we were the odd agency, and we were about 352. Now, if there were 352 agencies in Australia at that time, we were number 352. Now, I was good at growing things, so I began to grow this business, and I kept growing this business and growing this business until we got it to a point where the recession, the recession that had to happen, just at the point that we started building our capital in this business and it really started to grow, and our client base grew dramatically. But the problem was the more clients you had, the more risk you had because more people could go broke. And one after another, they started phoning us up. And the telephone used to sound exciting. Every time you heard the phone ring, you thought, yeah, here we go, next level, next client, we're growing this sucker. And it kept growing, kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But then when the recession hit and we started getting these other calls which said, I'm really sorry, but how much are we into you for? We've declared bankrupt. The phone began to change its tune. And then no one really wanted to pick up the phone because every time the phone rang, we just wanted to leave it there. And so we then got very close to going broke. Fortunately, through our ingenuity and the next lot of lessons we learned, we began to realize that there were some things that we could do to ensure that we could stay afloat, and thankfully we did. Finally, I got to a point I decided I wanted to sell the advertising agency and I wanted to get out of advertising altogether. So I sold the agency. I swore that for the next 12 months I was going to take a break. I wasn't going to wear a watch. I was just going to do whatever I wanted, just chill, take a break and enjoy myself, just for a while to think about my next idea. My next idea, I decided this time I'm going to work for someone. This time I want to get an education, and this time rather than paying for it, I want them to pay me. So I thought I'd take a sabbatical at News Limited. Not a good idea. You don't have sabbaticals at News Limited. Working for Rupert Murdoch is not the easiest job in the world for anyone who's ever worked for any of his empires. So anyway, I began to work for the man. And I'm working for the man, and I realized that working for the man is not me, is not where I'm meant to be. And I was living in a house at the time where I had a study at one end of the house, and I was walking along toward my study, and I just got an epiphany. And it just landed into my very being. I got the whole idea. It was back in 1995. And the idea that I got was an online university. And I thought to myself, that makes a lot of sense. The biggest cost in a university is its staff and its real estate. Look around the world. Look at the real estate that universities take up. Look at the buildings that universities have to grow. And I got this idea and I thought, this is possible. And I sat in my study and I began moving the matrices around, moving boxes around, looking at what was opportune. And then it just so happened, as synchronicity seems to work, I was just meeting with a guy who owned a college the following day. I was taking him off to the Grand Prix. So I phoned him and I said, John, can we meet at the Sheraton before we go to the Grand Prix? I've got this idea that I just want to run by you. And I showed him this idea and he just went weak at the knees. And he said, this is so amazing that you'd showed me this idea. He said, I'm working on an idea at the moment and this works in beautifully. He said, this Friday, what are you doing? I said, I don't know, what's on offer? And he said, come to Indonesia. I've got this business, these partners I want you to meet. So this was on a Monday. And by the time we got to Friday, we had done P&Ls on the business. We started doing all sorts of analysis on what the potential was. But there was one profound thing that kept John's focus, and that was the bottom line. He looked at the figure that we would create based on estimations, and he said, that's not possible. He said, something's wrong. And I said, what's wrong? He said, the bottom line. And I said, what's wrong with the bottom line? He said, I can't believe that we would make that much money in our first year. And I said, so what's wrong with it? We got the formula, we extracted it, we went over it again and again and again and again and again and again. And then John said to me, no, the student population, we're going to bring it down. I want you to bring the percentage down. Until we got to 0.175% of the global student population. The figure, our EBIT, at the end of our first financial year was projected to be $42 million. So we looked at it and we thought, here we have a viable business, but it got very, very cool. And I love ideas when they get very cool. The cool thing that we began to look at this and we realized that we could provide, with the college's content, we could actually provide degrees for $3,500 Australian dollars. Now, $3,500 for a degree is not a bad offering, is it? You know, and when you begin to think about it, the offering is down here, but the opportunity is right up here, isn't it? And when you begin to offer something so attractive, which becomes a no-brainer to the market, that they can get an Australian qualification, which was highly respected, for less than they would pay by coming over to Australia, taking up accommodation, buying furniture, setting themselves up, and so forth, it became a very attractive proposition. But it got bigger. We were in Indonesia, in Jakarta. We met with a university called University Terbuka. That university's vice-chancellor looked at our business proposal and said to us, I want half. And I said, 50%. He said, 50%. 50% is an enormous share that you're wanting from this business. What are you bringing to the table? And he said, Mr. Schrabel. It was actually Schnabel, but it was Schrabel. He said, Mr. Schrabel, your EBIT is $42 million in your first year of operation, based on your profit and loss. He said, you obviously have done your research and you know that we don't have 7,500 students. He said, strange number that you choose here. We have 75,000 students, all distance education. John's face went white. I didn't know what to say. So I just said, let us play some thinking music for some time and let us be back to you. We jumped in the car and I said to John, don't say a word. Get out of your head and let's go back to the hotel and get into our bodies. Let's just swim. Let's just do some laps in the pool and let's just get out of our heads for a while. So we got there and we just kept doing laps. We used to do laps every morning before our meetings. We did more laps than we did in the mornings. And our abacus was moving frantically. Has anyone seen the movie Social Network? That movie, I cried. Now, I watched that movie and I watched it evolve. The business or the company at the time was called Intellect 21. Same thing was happening to us. We had people flying from all over the world wanting to meet us about this online university idea that we had. We had people coming from Asia, from China. We had people coming from India. And we had a business that really had a lot of interest and a lot of attraction. And what I learned was the most major lesson that I've ever learned in my entire life. I learned the value of self-sabotage and self-esteem. And what occurred is we began to build this business to the degree that our very first few days online, without advertising, we made over $80,000. And we were getting students from Kazakhstan, Pakistan, Korea, South Korea. We were getting students from America. We were getting some students even from Australia. And we thought, this is awesome. This is a fantastic opportunity. Now, back then, what was going on is we were starting to get to a point where, as far as the business model was concerned, a lot of people were saying, well, internet on its own, we really don't know how this internet's really going to go. And, we're not so sure about whether this is going to float or survive, the internet as a concept. And what they also said is they said, we want online and offline. We want the campus to be a part of the business. And so we remodeled the whole business proposition. We valued the college, and that was one of the worst things that we could have done. Think about it, mindset-wise. John, at the time, was 62 years old. He'd worked hard. He spent a lot of time building his business, and we had it valued. And the business at the time was valued at $5.2 million. Now, all John saw was $5.2 million. All he saw was he and his wife packing up from Australia, moving to Provence, and just chilling out in their final years of life. Very old school thinking, of course, but essentially he was not in his place of passion. And he keeps looking at this young guy. Now, I was a bit younger then. And he's thinking, this young, energetic guy that's half crazy, he's driving me nuts already with his energy. He's just going to want to keep building this. Now, at this point, I had built another idea adjunct to this. And I said, let's create a program that what we do is we invest 10% of everything we earn in every single country we're in, and let's call it, for want of a better term, out of boxes into beds. And let's basically get the homeless people and bring them in and give them accommodation and give them training and development and help them to integrate back into society if they want it. And I started thinking, Intellect 21, the online university, yeah, I'll get involved in that, but I want to get involved in this other program later on. I really want to get this happening. But see, what happened was people either get results or they have reasons. And while this was all happening and all these people were flying from all over the world to meet with us, what was occurring was John was looking for reasons. I wanted results, but John wanted reasons. He wanted reasons for the thing to fold. Now, that might sound crazy, but it's true. He wanted reasons for the whole thing to fold, to collapse. So what would happen is that it would get to a point that he could get his dream, sell the college, head off, go live in Provence, and he's probably thinking red wine and cheese. But the thing is that at the end of the day, I had a dream. I wanted this to work. I had spent so long on this project, so much energy and time, and I saw the value of not only building a great business, but also building a legacy, building something that I could die and I could say, wow, look what we did. Wasn't that awesome? Look what we did. And I saw this whole thing begin to collapse and fall to bits. It started off, we did a deal. It was going to cost us around $6 million to actually build the infrastructure for this business, until one of these meetings that we had was essentially a group of people who had come from Sydney. You know, not too far out within Australia. They had the capacity to build the infrastructure for us, you know, and they had the resources. Now, we were talking, and I was talking about my vision, and I kept saying, what we see today is not what we'll be tomorrow. You know, eventually, you know what will happen? We'll have tutorials. And instead of sitting there at a tute, taking notes, listening, it'll all be on video. And you'll be able to see it on the internet. And I said, nah, come on. You know what it's going to be like? It's going it'll never work. You know, the internet does not have the bandwidth for that to be possible. Because you know that 95%, according to the ABS, 95% of the population at age retirement are either going to fall in one of three categories. They're either going to be dead broke, or putting their hand out saying, please, give me some money. 95%. And you know, as an entrepreneur, who we're listening to half the time? The 95%. We're asking them, where should we invest? I had a guy who phoned me yesterday, and he phoned me and he said, Rick, I'm after some advice. You know, I've got a property, and what I want to do is I want to develop this property, and I'm wondering whether I should put one big home and a bunch of small ones. And I said, why are you calling me? And he said, well, you know, you seem to have a bit of an idea about these things. And I said, but have you seen me divide land? Am I a developer? No, that's not where I choose to create my wealth. So why are you phoning me? You know, go to the area, find the 5%. Find that 5% who are doing really, really well in that area and talk to them. I'll help you with the mindset, and maybe I can help you with the structure, but I'm not the guy that's going to tell you how to divide a block of land and how to parcel it up. See, the thing is, quite often we're getting advice from the wrong people. And the thing that we've got to recognize, we've got to qualify the source. You know, where are we getting the information from? You know, where is our information coming from? Who are you asking? How do I create this in a business? How do I create that in a business? And most of it's going to come from these areas. I call myself essentially not an NLP trainer, but I call myself an NLP untrainer. And there's a good reason for that. Because I've realized over the years that essentially what is happening when I'm working with people and helping them to change their mindset, helping them to start to move their lives forward, I'm not training them, I'm untraining them. I'm trying to get out of their head their mother, their father, their uncle, their jealous brother, their vengeful sister, and all the other relatives and friends that do not serve them, probably in the 95%. And my job is to begin to show people how they can break and shift and change those patterns. And I'm going to be just talking about one aspect of that, and that's beliefs. Because beliefs do lie to us. See, whatever you thought about many years ago as holding firm, completely solid, absolutely true, might not be that way anymore. For instance, let's take you back to about, say, 7 years old. And when you were 7 years old, who thought fairy bread was cool? By a show of hands. Yeah? Absolutely. Who still believes fairy bread is cool? By the way, my hand's still up. But the thing is that we believed fairy bread was cool. You know, so the thing is that you also believed somewhere in your past that if you were given $50 the best thing to do with that was put that in your superannuation at 7 years old. Yeah, right. $50, you were king of the mountain, queen of the mountain. You could do anything. So the thing is, our beliefs constantly shift, but understand our beliefs lie. When I work with people to help their wealth consciousness, I begin to hear a lot of people talking about concepts such as The Secret. You know, a movie that was distributed all over the place, which had some really good information in it. But, you know, let's do this as a group. What I want you to do right now is I want you to manifest a bank manager walking through that door with a massive case. Now, let's say, wait a minute, about $12 million, okay? That gives us all a fair share, yeah? So let's manifest a bank manager walking in with $12 million. You ready? This is how you do it. Come on, work with me. There's someone in the room not working. Come on, work with me. You can do it. That's supposed to be how it works, isn't it? What is the block? What is the thing? What is the thing that's not working? Any ideas? You need more than 12 million. Sorry about my limiting beliefs. But the thing is, at the end of the day, I found this fascinating. The reason I found this very, very fascinating is because in the building next door is the Rialto. I used to have an office in the Rialto, and I had a major epiphany. The major epiphany I had caused me to write a book. There's a reason I wrote this book. And the reason I wrote this book, a good friend of mine said, for God's sake, write a book on the damn thing, because you just cannot shut up about it. The thing that I could not shut up about was my life completely transformed financially. And it transformed financially because I did something. Because I made $1 billion mistake. The thing that I realized is I realized something had to shift, something had to change. And I know a lot of people have gone out and they've studied and trained in NLP. By show of hands, who has studied and trained NLP? By show of hands. I tell you what, every hand in the room should go up. But the thing is, it's not about studying and training it, it's about applying it. I say to my students, if you're not changing 5 beliefs a day, you're not working as an NLP practitioner. If you're not beginning to shift your values so your values are in line with where you want to be, you're not an applied practitioner. So what I did is I began to notice that things could shift, but very, very fast. But what I began to notice is that what you had to do is you started to shift yourself to a point where you started to create your own luck. Do you know what I mean? You know, at the end of the day, you know, what I'd really like to do, before we go any further, I'd actually like to give this away. And the thing is that what I'd like to do is give it away. You know, I'd like someone to take up that opportunity and just take it. You know, just take it. And can we give this gentleman a huge round of applause? Now, if we can share and we can just get a microphone, I want you to read, not now, but in a moment, I want you to open up the first page and I want you to read what I have written on that first page. In a big, loud voice, but first your name.
Hi, it's Jonathan.
Hi, Jonathan.
And handwritten on the inside front cover is, you're lucky. You will live a life beyond the limits.
Can we give Jonathan a huge round of applause? Why is it? Why is it that you can actually say, do this, 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 and then all of a sudden get the success that you really want? But so many people are still sitting here, not actually doing the things that they really have to do. When we think of a lot of the stuff this morning that Jamie shared, and you know, it was the first time I'd actually heard Jamie speak. And he was just going rapid fire. Why? Because there's such enormous value in there. And the thing is that I've recognized that I equally have been building value in me to a point where I just want to keep sharing. And I began to realize the very basic philosophies of wealth. And I realized the basic philosophies of wealth is essentially value times leverage. It's that simple. You just keep putting in so much value into you until, even if you give a lot of it out there, you still have tons to monetize. I can do 7 days of sharing and not charge for it because I still have about another 365 days that I can charge for. But the thing is, at the end of the day, what we need to do is we need to stop the block that stops the value from coming out. See, can I be a bit woo-woo on you for a moment? I think, I could be completely wrong, but I think what happens is, we kind of find a body somewhere. There's a body about to be born on earth. And all of a sudden, we go, and we're now in the body. And we're thinking, oh, this feels weird. What's all this about? And then all of a sudden we begin to grow and we begin to develop, and there's something inside of us. There's something deep, deep, deep inside of us that has to come out. And some people express that, as a mechanic. Some people express that, as a PA. Some people express that as an artist. Some people express that, as a civil engineer. And some people express that from the stage. Now, many, many years ago, that's the thing that I wanted to do. I wanted so much to get up here. But when I thought of it, my palms used to go sweaty. I used to shake. And my voice used to go really weird. You know that voice? Hello, my name's Rick. I'm feeling really excited and authoritative. And so what would happen is, you would want that to come out, but it just wouldn't come out. So, of course, that's the building of the skills. So you build the skills and so forth. But the first thing that you've got to address is essentially the beliefs. So the thing that I want to share with you is a few points. What are beliefs? Where do they come from? How do they affect business? And why are they so influential? So let us go to this after Who Can Change Them. Now, here are two gentlemen. These two gentlemen happen to be father and son. If you begin to look, they look a little bit alike. I mean, they've both actually told people exactly what their point of view on life is and the world. In fact, they've tattooed it on their foreheads. Have you ever heard the saying that, rotten fruit doesn't fall far from the tree? Birds of a feather, like father, like son, like mother, like daughter. These are sayings that just flip out of our lips so easily, but what they tell us more is about the beliefs that underlie them. So what they thought many, many years ago is they believed that whatever family you were born into was it. So whatever your father was, whatever your mother was, chances are that's what you were. And that's what people believed. So then what happened was then they thought, wait a minute, there's got to be another way. What we can actually do is, put some electric shock into that brain and kind of shock the stuff out. So all of a sudden we can start to think in a different way. Now then we came to the academic world, and the academic world said, what we'll do is we'll read books. Just put lots of information in. It's kind of like the brain's like a cup. You just keep putting information in and hopefully some of it sticks. And then what's going to happen as a result of that is we're going to end up exactly where we imagined ourselves. But of course, the beliefs still get in the way. At the end of the day, there are so many ways that you can make money. So many ways. But people don't do the very first thing quite often, or the second thing, because it just doesn't get them where they need to be. Then all of a sudden a key appeared. Now, I got very excited about this because what was happening for me was I found that, yeah, sure, I could create businesses, but there were things that were still lacking in me. I found myself that, when I go back to my stupid brand, when I was branded as stupid, what I used to do is I used to act very stupid. And I always seemed to be the guy that seemed to attract trouble. I was the trouble and let's get rid of him somehow. And so what happened for me was all those concepts of who I thought I was showing up in business after business after business. In all honesty, I could blame John for Intellect 21 going south. I could blame him so easily. The truth of the matter was, I have to take my part of responsibility in it. Because here's what was going on at the time. At the time, I was going out with a girlfriend who told me that this business isn't going to work. You know, she said, based on her perception of the world, she said that it's just not going to work. You know, these guys aren't going to take you serious. It's not really going to become the business you imagine it to be. And so what was happening is our relationship was not so good. Not only that, my relationship with me was not so good. And every time things didn't work out, I went back to the little boy and started feeling very alone, very sad, very angry. Get what I'm talking about? And they're the feelings that seem to come up through the surface and come out through the body, but seem to be replicated in our actions, in our very, very actions. So all of a sudden, I came across, I was studying at the time at the Life Coaching Academy as a coach, but I found that I was still dogging my clients. I was still, aiming to phone my clients saying, you said you were going to do this, have you done it? And my clients would say, well, no. And I was thinking, what is the thing that can really create change? I mean, you just can't keep dogging people. You've actually really got to either inspire them, motivate them, move them, shift them, but there's something else. And all of a sudden what happened is I discovered the world of NLP. And all of a sudden what I discovered was a key. And that key essentially took things to a whole new level. All of a sudden I began to realize that you can actually get into the neural pathways of the brain and you can begin to reprogram how the brain operates and functions. Let me roll back to the point where I was the sweaty palmed, high-voiced person who didn't want to get up on stage. That person had a certain neurology. What got me excited was that all of a sudden what I could begin to do is to begin to change my neurology. So I could begin to see myself in a whole different light. So I could hear myself sounding quite different and actually feel myself performing. And I could start to change a lot of that old programming from the past. And it got me excited. At first, I've got to be honest with you, there was a part of non-belief there. I thought, because I tried lots of things before, and I thought, what if it doesn't work? So what I did is, thankfully, I had some really good mentors at the time. And my mentor said, Rick, here's the deal. You are aiming, because of your concepts of imperfection, your concepts around you not being clever or smart or intelligent. And there were many, many others. There were aspects of myself where I didn't think I was good looking, I didn't think I was athletic, I didn't think I was intelligent, I didn't think I had really any ability and nothing to sneeze at. And the thing that I began to realize is that none of that was true. But of course I didn't believe it then. I was also worried about what people would think. If I got up on stage, they would see my ugliness. They would hear my lack of intelligence. Blah, 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 blah. It was a little voice going off and off and off. And so my mentor said, Rick, you want to get all your ducks in a row. You want to get things absolutely perfect. But that's not how it works, Rick. What you're trying to do is you're trying to get it all right. You're trying to study everything, know everything before you take action. Rick, sometimes it's the action that gives you the skill. It's the action that gives you the knowledge. And what I also want to share with you is a little tool that I use in my businesses so I can identify where I need to focus. And I'll share that with you in a moment. Now, here is what Psychology Today said about NLP. This was in a Psychology magazine. They said that NLP is the most powerful vehicle for change in existence. And I've got to be honest with you, I have not yet seen anything more powerful, more profound than NLP in creating accelerated change. Now, here's an example. Let's think about some of the people that you may know. Oprah Winfrey. Does everyone know Oprah Winfrey? Yeah? Oprah Winfrey went from relative successful journalist to billionaire after learning NLP. Anthony Robbins went from very large man, no potential, big library of books, no success to speak of, in debt, and then learned NLP. Now he doesn't buy stocks and shares anymore, he buys islands. Then when we begin to look in politics, NLP started in the therapies and then started moving outside the therapies, then began to move into politics. Bill Clinton, NLP trained. Barack Obama, NLP trained. George Bush, not NLP trained. But the thing is, what you begin to get a sense of is, as I began to become quite impassioned by it, I started off at practitioner level. My mentors said, just go, just trust, just play with this, Rick. The more you begin to trust in the process, you just allow it to happen, the more you get the value. So I saw some shifts. I saw some incredible shifts. You know, I learned how to change my beliefs. I equally learned how to change my very actions, how I spoke. Then as I went to master level, I learned how to shift my values. I began to learn how to shift my specific values to get my results. All of a sudden, I realized one thing. Now, here's one thing. Does everyone know what their values are? By a show of hands. Who knows what their values are? Your most important values are values 1, 2, and 3. And if wealth is not within your top 6 values, you're not going to get it. If rich is not in your top 6 values, you're not going to get it. Because it's what you value is what you move towards. And understanding that values is not just simply, oh, well, that's okay. Rick said, you know, if rich is not in my top 6 values, oh, I'll just put it there. Okay, value number 1 is now rich. That's not how it works. A value has to be neurologically aligned in order for it to work. And when it's neurologically aligned, you become hardwired for that value. And what you find is you find that your interest begins to shift. Then when I got to presenter level, I realized that here now was the thing that I really wanted to be at. I wanted to be at the point where I could get up on stage and feel confident about being up on stage. But not only that, I wanted to know where to move, how to move, when to move, how to move my arms, and how not. Can I give you a little demonstration of how I used to present? Okay, this used to be Rick Schnabel many years ago before I learnt NLP. Okay, guys, what I want to talk about is NLP today. I don't know much about it, because we're going back to the past, of course. And the thing is that what I really want to do is I really want to talk about NLP and how effective it can actually be in creating great results in your life. Yeah? You get what I mean? Do you understand? Oh shit, I'm off the stage. So the thing was that essentially what happened was I used to speak very, very fast. Because as Todd rightly said, I was a visual person. Visual people speak very, very fast. That's what they do because they get a picture equals 1,000 words, doesn't it? So if you get a picture, all of a sudden you can describe the room, you can describe the seats, the carpet. I can't even talk as fast as this picture is. You get the sense? So the thing is, I began to realize that not everyone's visual and that I had to change how I presented. And here is one thing that I can share with you. Those of you who can get up here on stage, you can change your life. Because once upon a time, I used to work for time. And I used to exchange my time for money. Now, I can get up on stage and I can talk and present and show what I do. And within an hour, half an hour, I can create $50,000, $100,000, if the value is there. Does that make sense? So the thing is that equally so, if you have a message, if you have something that you want to share with the world, at the end of the day, if you can get up on stage, can't you share it better? You know, rather than one-on-one? You know, it all is dependent on how many people come in the room and how much you can share that message with. And I'm pointing from here, aren't I? Not from here. Because this is who we are, isn't it? And so who I was, all of a sudden, I began to find myself through this. And the model that I want to share with you quickly is this. If you want to look at business or any aspect of your business, it's going to work in one of 4 categories. How many categories? 4. And so if you think about it, who here really wants to take their business, their life to the next level? By show of hands. Turn around to the person next to you and say, I'm at the right spot in the right room. This is the interaction part. This is the interaction part, okay? This means I'm learning, I'm participating, I'm applying the knowledge. This means, what time's dinner? Oh, that's right, I had it. What time's sleep? So the thing is that if you really want to take your life to the next level, you've got to actually convince your body that you are. So turn around to the person next to you and say, I'm going to the next level. Fantastic. Now, can I share what your body's probably saying right now? I'm going to the next level. I'm going to the next level. Your body's going, piss off. Seriously, isn't it? I mean, at the end of the day, if you're really going to shift your body, you've actually got to tell your body or convince your body that you are. So turn around to the person next to you and say, I'm going to the next level. I know I'm an NLP untrainer. And I know that it's about the head. But the head only helps what the body feels, doesn't it? You don't do what you think. Nah. You do what you feel, don't you? And if you can get your body to start to feel like it's moving somewhere, you will move somewhere. But if you're having to do the head work all the time, saying, yeah, I'm really moving. Oh, wow, that goal is so bright, so vivid, so real. Oh, now I can see myself in the picture. Oh, yeah, wow, that goal, oh, voila. And now I'm back in the present looking at the future. Oh, awesome. It ain't going to happen. You've got to start feeling again. When did we get to the 21st century when we're so businesslike? You know, got to get it right, don't you? You kind of come in and say, my name's Rick Schnabel, pleased to meet you. You know, full of emotion, connection, you know, all that sort of jazz. Welcome, welcome. You know, really bloody convincing. You know, my body's even convinced that I'm so excited. You know, jeepers creepers. You know, at the end of the day, if you really want to make a move, forget what everyone else says about you. Didn't Jamie say that in the beginning? You know, at the end of the day, the sooner you can get over what other people think of you, the sooner you can start speaking from here and letting it out, and the sooner you can start changing your belief system that really aligns to your goal, that's when you get your goal. That is why people do not get their goals, because they're not fully invested in it. So the thing is that your attitude is the first thing you've got to check. If it's not energetic like that, your attitude, technical term, is rooted. Action is the next thing you need to take. But taking action with a bad attitude looks like this. Get what I mean? It ain't that bloody exciting, is it? You know, at the end of the day, what you want to do is you want to move along your life with the belief that you're getting something of value. The next part is your skills. Now, a lot of people get this wrong. A lot of people wait until they build the skills and get it all perfect and you know, herd their cats appropriately. You know, has anyone ever herded cats? That's like building your skills and waiting until you're ready. You'll never be ready. You just got to do it. And you will build the skills because soon you will do it and all of a sudden, poof, you'll say, okay, listen, when I walk off the stage, I will Step, not fall. Now I know how to walk. Yeehaw! Your body does it naturally. Why do you think when you were a baby, the first thing you wanted to do was pull the tablecloth down and stand up? You know, our body does it naturally. But the thing is that what we do is we start hearing everyone else tell us exactly what it is and what it's not, and what we are and what we're not, and we start believing in it. 0 to 7 is called the imprint period. 0 to 7 is when your brain is like a sponge. You know, basically, you learnt your finances, whether you know it or not, 0 to 7. Depending upon what your mum or your dad said when those little envelopes came, you know, the ones with the windows in them? When they came into the house, and then all of a sudden they put on the table and someone opened them and had a look at the amount that the electricity company was charging or the phone company was charging, and the response to that, you had your first financial lesson. That taught you how to respond in paying bills. I love paying bills. I want to pay multi-million-dollar telephone bills. Because you know what's happening then, don't you? Someone's making a lot of calls. Someone's making a lot of money. Someone's making a big business. So the thing is that finally is the system. If your attitude is out, then you can fix that. If your actions, that is, if there's a function that's not actually occurring, then check your attitude. Find out what your attitude is around it or your belief system around it and change it. Then your skills will pretty much determine what action that you're taking and what you're learning and the value you're growing through that, and you'll know what skills you need to learn. Here's an example. If you go out and let's say you're in a sales environment, you make 100 calls and someone says yes. Well, that tells you that maybe your communication skills need to improve. Maybe your pitch needs to shift. And then all of a sudden 2 say yes. And then you think, oh, there's been a shift there. Yeah, improvement. But then all of a sudden it gets to 10, to 20, and so forth. The moment you get beyond your mental barriers, it's amazing. In that building next door was when I shifted my mental barrier. I could not make $100,000 a year. I could make 88, I could make 89, I could make 98, I could make every single denomination under 100,000 a year. I just couldn't do it. It was that 6-figure ceiling that I mentally had placed myself in. Until I became brave, I put myself in a commission-only business, and I didn't even know that I'd gone beyond 100,000. You know, because I used to get just big lumps of money come in. And then I hit the next barrier. Then I got to a whole new level. Once you've made 100,000, it's so easy to make 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It doesn't really matter. But there will be other barriers. Now, I heard another barrier, and it was when a good friend of mine said, Jeepers, you're working about, 4 days a week? And you're earning more than the Prime Minister. That's when my next barrier occurred. I thought, Jeepers, am I good enough for this? You know, am I worthy to be earning this sort of money? So the first thing I did is I did some NLP and began to shift that belief. And then it got easier and easier and easier. And understand that don't think that you learn NLP and then all of a sudden life is bliss from that point on. Understand that you're going to keep removing layers and layers and layers and layers. I still see coaches. I have coaches for various aspects of myself. Except the shift is not as profound as once it used to be. The layers are thinner, finer. Equally so, you know, I find when I am training, you know, I actually should be paying you sometimes because I'm getting great value. You know, when I am playing in my flame, when I am playing in the game that I love most, I am learning most. And that's the value of doing what you love. And this is a system. So let's just look at attitude for a moment. If we look at attitude, if you look at your company, you look at the company you work for, or you look at, you know, your environment, whatever your environment is, whether you're a sole trader or whether you're in a company or you're working for someone, we're going to check on is the attitude. Now, if we look at that, it's belief. The way you build attitude is largely based on beliefs and values, but we're just going to cover the beliefs area today. Beliefs is the belief in the company. The worst thing you can ever do is work for a company, particularly your own, and not have any belief in it. Because if you don't have any belief in it, the moment that you get on the phone or talk to someone, what you're going to do is you're going to undo all the goodwill that you've actually created in the company. Because you'll make excuses for it. And it will translate in all sorts of ways. Understand, it's not what we say, it's the very source of where we're saying it from. So, a lot of people try to perfect their spiel, and pretend pretend you're successful and then you will become successful. Have you ever heard that? Act as if. Well, act as if, yeah, right. Act as if when you're neurology, when you're just about to go into a major presentation and you hear the little boy, the little girl saying, excuse me, you're not good enough. Who do you think you are? You think you're Mr. Fancy Pants, don't you? And then you hear your dad. Don't work outside of your station, son. Stick with your station. And then you hear your mum. Oh, I'd hate to see you disappointed, love. I'd hate to see you get disappointed. And so what happens is you hear this. You hear it as an adult, but the thing is that you got confused. It doesn't sound like your mother or father anymore. It sounds like you. It's actually your voice now. And you begin to believe it. And because you believe it, you act as if. That's acting as if. So at the end of the day, your beliefs need to shift. You need to have belief in your company. You need to have belief in your products and services. You need to have belief in your management. You need to have belief in your team. You need to have belief in the system. And more so, you need to have belief in yourself. Because everything begins at the belief of self. That was the value that I got through learning NLP. And what happened was all of a sudden what I had was a series of tools where I could begin to shift my very belief in myself. And a lot of people, I remember way back when first fresh-faced, walked into the training, a little bit scared, walked in the training and just got in the training and just kind of, walked around, saw a bunch of faces and thought, okay, here we go. Here, this is exciting, this will be interesting. And all of this was going on for me. And I remember back then, I remember how I felt. But I remember at the end of my first level training, I remembered how excited I was. And I remembered seeing so many things in me that had shifted. And finally, I had tools. I actually had tools. All those people who were telling me, just get over it. That's not how you just get over it. You've got to go through a process to just get over it. And then people were telling me, just let it go. That's not how you let it go. You've got to go through a process. People said you just need to shift your values. Yeah, how do you do that? People said, it's your belief. It's a limiting belief. You need to change it. How do you do that? I didn't know how to change these things. No one teaches these things. Then I began to realize that what I was learning was some incredible, powerful tools. And I used to say, this should be in schools. It has now entered into the educational system through the US. It's coming here. It's now a PhD. They're beginning to develop this as a science because they understand the power of it. This should be taught to all schools, all kids in school. My daughter said to me once, I said to her, how come you've got so many friends? And she said, because I'm good looking. And I said, but how come you're so smart? I don't know, I just am. Why? Because I've been using NLP on her ever since she was a baby. And I have programmed her and helped her to program herself. And she has a belief system that is serving her. You know, some people say, oh, NLP is all about control. Well, what do you want to do? Drive a car without a steering wheel? You know, without a rear vision mirror? Without pedals? We've got to have some control. And the thing is, at the end of the day, when we think about our locus of control, you know, what we do is we reach outside so often for control, when the real control needs to be inside. You need to pull yourself inside out. You need to put the value there and then let it come out. And you need to have belief in all these things, particularly that. Particularly a belief in self. And the way that you begin to build it is with NLP. And this is what we do. What we do is we start off at NLP practitioner. We then move to masters, and we then move to trainers. Of course, we go to trainers training, which I'm not even going to talk about today because we only do that by invitation only. But the thing is that essentially, it's a program. It's a process. That what you do is you learn essentially, and what I encourage our students to do, is I say, come in with a biggie. You know, come in with something that has been challenging you for all your life. And come in with that. Because what we do is we take people through the program and then we put in insurance. And our insurance is that we put coaches with you for the next 12 months. So if you don't get what you wanted in the NLP, then we're going to make sure you get what you want. Am I a hard taskmaster? Yes. But I do it with love. But the thing is that if I don't push, you're not going to push. And sometimes it's the push that you need. So let's talk a little bit about NLP. But firstly, before we do that, I want to tell you a story. Has anyone ever read a book called Illusions, by a show of hands? Yeah? Anyone? Yes, fantastic. Oh, now you've got another book. In the very front of Illusions, Richard Bach is the author. It's a great book. Helps some mind shifts from time to time. But essentially he starts talking about these little creatures. And these little creatures, they were clinging onto a log. And the water was just rushing towards them. You know, get a sense? You know what I mean? Just hanging there on the log. You know, just trying to get it right. Hanging on for grim death. And the water was just coming up against them. And then all of a sudden, one of the creatures said, I've had enough. I've had enough. I'm doing something different. I'm going to let go. All the 95% of all the other creatures said, you can't do that. You'll die. When you let go, you will be thrust into the river. You will be pounded against the rocks. You will be snagged and drowned. You can't let go. And the little creature says, as the river was coming against the little creature said, it's got to be better than this. And sometimes what we need to do is we need to be able to let go. Why? Because beliefs become what? They do ultimately, but what? Let's take this in micro stages. What does a belief become next? What do your beliefs create? Your thoughts. They create your thoughts. Your very thoughts are your basic beliefs. So when your thoughts then have a certain belief, what do your thoughts create? We're chunking up a little bit high. Let's go the next minute step. What does it create next? All of that. And these create those. Your thoughts create your words. So when people try to manufacture their life, you know, what they're doing is they're coming from their very beliefs. I've got to admit, as you develop, all you hear sometimes is people's beliefs when they're talking to you. You can hear their beliefs. And you go, right, okay, I know exactly where you're at. And they're just talking and they think they're telling you a story or about their life or whatever, but they're telling you what they believe. And you can tell where people are at based on their words. So your words create certain whats. They certainly create stories, and boy, do we have stories. they create actions. So your basic words pretty much communicate what's about to happen. And then your words create the actions, of course, and your actions become your habits. Because the thing that you do with a repetition of generally 3 is a pattern. And you've got to break patterns. And your habits become your values. And then your values become your destiny. So when you begin to think about your very beliefs, don't underestimate the value of your beliefs, because your beliefs pretty much have determined your entire story. In fact, your beliefs are mapping out your future. Your beliefs are telling you how it's going to be. And beliefs are 100% true for you. Whatever your beliefs are, you will create. And if you want to create something different, then you need to change your beliefs. Does that make sense? Mahatma Gandhi said that. Mahatma Gandhi was quite an inspirational man, yes or yes? And he understood the value of that. Robert Anton Wilson also said, what the believer believes, the prover proves. Whatever you believe, you're going to prove that you're right about it. Because we've got a thing called the ego. Who likes being wrong, by a show of hands? That's right. We do not like being wrong. Your ego will ensure that your beliefs are right. In fact, you will argue them. And there's a saying that says if you argue for your limitations, you get to keep them. And that's essentially what people are doing all the time. Now, here are where your beliefs can come from. Now, your beliefs can certainly come from your parents. Now, depending on what your parents were or are, that's largely where your beliefs will come from. Authorities. Authorities, your beliefs can certainly come from authorities. They can come from role models. And your beliefs can certainly come from your friends. Your beliefs can also come from movie stars. And they also come from relatives and weird uncles. At the end of the day, the person that you were at about age 10 to 12, that is, you became whoever you admired most. For me, it was rock stars. So I grew my hair. Bit hard to believe right now, but I did. I grew my hair. My very first investment was an electric guitar and an amplifier. That was my very first loan, my very first investment. And it was based upon my heroes of the time, based upon my beliefs that I was stupid. It wasn't until I ran my advertising up to turnover around 4 million that I finally sat back one night. It was about 10 p.m. at night. And I wasn't there late at night because I had to be there. I was there late at night because I wanted to be there. I loved working in my agency. And I realized my whole agency was built on percentages and formulas. And I thought, I've built a multi-million-dollar business out of nothing. And my mathematics teacher, who told me I was stupid, well, she was in Nimbin with her boyfriend, who was a student that she ran away with back in high school. But the thing is that at the end of the day, what we begin to realize is we are influenced by all these things, and they do become our beliefs. And so what happens is we start out as a little baby, as a clear vessel. And someone decides, that is us, to believe what people say, and we murky up the water. And of course, what happens when we murky up the water is we put other things in there to try to make the water clear. We'll put some knowledge in there, and that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with knowledge at all. Knowledge is a good thing. But what we might do is we might put the odd diploma in there, to prove to us that the water's not that murky. And then, we might go and put a degree in there just to prove that the water's not murky. Now we've got, clear signs that the water's not murky on our walls. Then what we do is we go even further. We might even get an MBA and, put that in there as well. And then there are other people who will put things like the pill. They will put particular drugs and all sorts of medications into their dirty water. Other people put other water into their dirty water, and they just put it into their dirty water and kind of go, it's going to get clean eventually. I don't know about you, but if you've got a bucket of dirty water, it doesn't really matter how much water you put in there, it's still a bucket of dirty water. And so what we do is we keep putting these things in. So here is what happens, and here is what I learned. I used to be really angry. I'm certainly not there now, thank God. Particularly not as a family man with kids. You want to be peace-loving and you want to have a great relationship. I've got 2 daughters, and I love them dearly, and I love being a dad. Now, the thing is, I would have hated to be a dad when I was in my teens because I was angry. My biggest fear was that I was going to kill somebody. I really, that might sound weird, but that was my fear. Because I got so angry, and what is anger really? It's frustration, a lot of it, compounded. And so I put a lot of frustration in there till eventually I felt like I was a keg, I was going to explode. And so what happened was my belief attracted certain people. Some people look out at a crowd, they look out at an audience, they look out at a group of people, and it's an audience, it's a group of people. But their beliefs seem to only find certain people that seem to show up. Because of their beliefs, all these people start showing up. And if you're an angry person, chances are you're going to find angry situations. And what's going to happen is you're going to create a specific belief system that's going to have the world show up exactly as you imagined it to be. Does that make sense? And this is what people do. Now, what I want to do quite quickly is I just want to talk about Richard Branson for a moment. And then I want to talk about this person. Who's the billionaire? Correct. So let's get rid of the other. And let's begin to look about Richard Branson's belief systems. Now, you can learn a belief system based on what people say. Adventure equals reward. That's one of his belief systems. I succeed, I get rewarded. He also says, tackle problems immediately. The moment it happens, tackle them immediately. Dreaming is his favourite pastime. How many companies has Richard Branson got? The technical answer is a lot. Because he likes dreaming them up. I hate to admit defeat. And of course, he doesn't allow it. Hard work and fun are family traits. He actually believes it's genetic. He really, really does. Anger, sadness, blame, guilt, and fear are limiting emotions. I completely agree. Now, then we look at, screw it, let's do it, of course. That's his attitude. Now, is this person the billionaire or is this person? Who knows who this person is? Warren Buffett. Okay, let's get rid of the other, the imposter. Value is more important than price. Value is more important than price. I want you to remember that one because it will shift your life when you realize that it's not about price, it's about value. Some read Playboy, I read reports. By his own admission, he reads about 3,000 annual reports a year. Is he going to build his neurology in that direction? Of course he is. I always knew I was going to be rich. Hey, that's a belief. Convenient belief, I would say. History is not all there is to know. Reputation integrity is paramount. Let blockheads read what blockheads wrote. He's talking about journalists now. And the 95%. I look for value, I grow mine all the time. Does anyone know who this person is? Carlos Slim, absolutely. Saw that technology was starting to move, telecommunications was starting to move. He made a move, bought a large telecommunications company and became a billionaire. Now the world's, I think he's still number 1, the richest man in the world. Let's get rid of the imposter. Let's look at Carlos Slim. Now, first of all, this is not his belief, but this will give you a bit of an idea of his belief. At 12 years old, he opened up his first bank account, $400 US he put in there. Now, that gives you a bit of an idea of what he values. When you live for others' opinions, you're dead. Write that one down. Believe in simplified structures, austerity of economy, boldness of ideas, flexibility and minimal hierarchy. Avoid feelings that gnaw at the soul, envy, jealousy, pride, lust, selfishness, revenge, greed. One cannot live with fear and guilt. The reason they're up here is you can get a sense of where their beliefs are at. Not only that, you can actually tell that these people have done a lot of work on themselves. And essentially, that's what NLP is all about. It's about shifting much of this stuff that gnaw at the soul. Now, the big question is this: what are your beliefs costing you? My beliefs cost me $1 billion. In fact, probably more. Now, the thing that I realized I had to do something. I had to begin to shift. I had to begin to take myself to another level. And the thing is that the lies that we tell ourselves over and over again do actually cost us. They cost us over and over again. I want you to mentally think about what your beliefs, your limiting beliefs, your negative emotions, and all those things that stop you from moving in your business. I want you to begin to think what that amount might be for you. So go ahead, just write an amount. What you think your beliefs are actually costing you. Your limiting beliefs, your negative emotions, what are your beliefs costing you? And what we're going to do is going to go around the room quickly, and we're going to find the person who believes that they're paying the highest price. So give me a figure. $1 million? 1 million. Do we have any takers on 1 million? Going once, going twice? Any takers on 1 million? Any more than, how many? 20 million. We've got 20 million over here. This man is the champion. 20 million is holding all the limiting beliefs that one needs to hold in order to have those negative emotions and sadness and anger and guilt and blame and all those sorts of things that can happen when you have those limiting beliefs. Okay, we have 20 million over here. Do we have any takers on 20 million? Anyone higher than 20 million? 20 million? 20 million? Any takers on 20 million? $1 billion. Can we create a huge round of applause over here? $1 million. Congratulations. Take your limiting beliefs home and enjoy them. So the thing that I'm going to do, of course I'm going to encourage you. I'm going to encourage you to take the next step, because I believe that the next step is the most important one. Whatever you're doing next can be the difference of removing 20 million, 1 billion, and every single amount underneath that. So in closing, we find our little critters. You know those little critters that were clinging onto the log? And there they are in the river, clinging to the log. And they've been clinging to the log for a long, 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 long time. Probably their entire lives. You know what I mean? Until one of them says, that's it. I just read a book by Branson. It's called Screw It, Let's Do It. And I'm just going to screw it, let's do it. And so with that, the little creature just let go. Now, part of the prediction of the other creatures was kind of correct. And that was that this creature did go under the water and did hit some rocks. And started to think, the 95% are right. This is the end of me. And then finally came up to the surface of the river. And then its head just popped out of the water, and it began to realize that it was floating along this river and starting to see a whole new world. I mean, the landscape looked different. It looked incredibly different. And it began to float along the river until it got to this quiet eddy in the river. And no longer was it a raging rapid. You know, like starting a business, it starts out like a bit of a raging rapid, but eventually it starts calming down and things really start to fall into place. You know what I mean? That's right, you do, don't you? And then all of a sudden it got to this point where it began to come to this eddy, and it was this beautiful golden sand, just by this river. And this little creature got out and realized for the first time in its life it actually had legs. And it was one of those beautiful, beautiful sunny days. And it looked at all the green of the leaves and the blue sky and the water moving and the flow of currency that was just moving along the river. You know when you get into flow of the currency, where all the gold accumulates at the banks of the river? Sounds like financial language, doesn't it? And no longer was it trying to hold on or resist its own natural flow. And it got up and it stood there, and the warmth of the sun was on its back. And at that moment, it began to feel its muscles on its back for the first time. And these wings just opened up and expanded and just naturally did what it naturally does now as it began to float up higher and higher. And the creature just went higher and higher, and all of a sudden got higher and higher. And you know when you've been that high? You know how high? That high. And it began to look way down there into the river. And it saw this little log and all these creatures clinging to it. And as its expanse, as it began to look at this wide, magical world where all opportunities exist, it realized that over there were these orchards, these gardens, and all this splendor. And there was a carnival with people. And there were these magical things, and magical feelings began to come out. And for the first time, this creature got out of its head and got into its heart. And it realized all those things that I thought I was, I'm not that at all. I'm much more than that. You know what I mean? Because you're much more than that, aren't you? Because anything else is an illusion. Everything else was an illusion. And it's now time to create a whole new, exciting illusion. And give yourselves a round of applause because you create the dream. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you.